Hi everybody, welcome back to another video we found that beginners might need in their little arsenal of thinking when they're starting to paint. Now you know these videos are just very personal, and it's my experience over, 50 some odd years of doing art and painting, and some of the realizations that I've come across that I found really important. And I guess I'm doing these videos because I never had anything like this to go on when I was learning how to paint, and it wasn't the easiest thing to do. Of course, I'd gone to school, and that certainly helped. I went to the University of Guelph, and the experience there and the education I got were from some pretty fabulous teachers. Anyways, I thought one of the videos we would do is called Titling Your Work. This seems to be, historically something that maybe is left over, or somebody who doesn't really give too much credence to the idea of what the artwork might be, where it could take you, some clue of what you're looking at, and I think it's just as important as the painting itself. There have been some beautiful titles out there that are iconic and unforgettable, and they're still powerful to this day. And I'm talking about musical groups, some of the titles of their songs that they have come up with that are absolutely brilliant and poetic. There's poems with beautiful titles, there's movies with beautiful titles. Certainly, I know when I do a painting, sometimes the journey of going through the painting and painting it, the title occurs to me while I'm working on it. It doesn't come naturally, it doesn't come right at the very beginning. It is something that gets worked on, and the imagery leaks into my brain, and I catch myself doing certain things or thinking about certain things that I ended up saying, wow, that could be a really good title. And that's happened to me more than once, several times. Some of my best titles have occurred to me while I was doing the artwork. Some of the titles that I found quite fascinating when I was thinking about this, and we could start with Claude Monet, who did a painting of a fellow in a boat in this misty background, and the color of the sun is red. He exhibited in a show and an art, and he called it Impressions, Sunrise. And an art critic was quite taken by the title, and he said, yeah, the whole show is about impressions, hence the beginning of the whole impressionistic movement. They coined the phrase, and for the next 150 years, it created a whole body of work by the impressionists themselves and other artists. So I think that's quite fascinating, that little bit of information. Another famous painter, Vincent van Gogh, had an iconic title, The Starry Night, and it is a famous painting, and so is the title. I mean, these are iconic titles. They don't go away. When someone says The Starry Night, you immediately think of the painting, not McLean's song, although the song is about the painting, and if you really listen to the lyrics of McLean's song, it'll bring tears to your eyes. It's really, really powerful. So I've made a small list of things on the periphery of my work, and I'll mention some titles that I've come up with in my own work that I think are kind of special. John Gillespie Magee, written back, I think, in World War I, and he was a pilot, and he wrote this beautiful poem called High Flight. Now, I love that poem. It's probably my favorite poem. I bought the poster and I hung it up in my studio, and I occasionally read it because it's just so powerful. But I love the title of the poem, but more importantly, the content of the poem itself. And it's about him flying in his plane and doing all kinds of stunts and not putting his guns at anything. He's just enjoying being free and just being a pilot. And unfortunately, he died the very next day. He got shot down, and I don't know, that's just really, really powerful stuff. Movies that I quite like with really powerful titles. and one is Wuthering Heights. It's a beautiful story. I thought it was Withering Heights until I looked it up. It's Wuthering Heights, and it's the winds that blow across the moors, creating all kinds of havoc, and hence it's the same kind of thing that's happening in the story. It's not the most happy ending. Again, it's one of those stories that, you know, several movies have been made from. To Kill a Mockingbird, I always found quite a fascinating title for a movie, and it's a powerful story where a black man has been accused of raping a white woman, and the movie progresses and, you know, makes you think about what was going on back in the 30s and 40s. And again, it's just a powerful story, and it stays with you. And I guess that's what I'm saying. You've got titles that will lead the viewer to a higher understanding of what the story's about, and maybe a clue of some symbolism that might create a little bit of intrigue. Do it. I sometimes put in the locations of where the painting has been painted, so I don't forget where the piece has been done, and I also put down the title, of course, and the size of the painting. So I do play with some symbolism, like a lot of writers do, and I just have fun with it. Maybe a couple of thoughts about titles for music. One of my all-time favorite bands from the 60s is Commander Cody and his Lost Planet Airmen. And that title alone has stuck with me for the longest time, and I've never forgotten it. And the music's beautiful. I mean, it's boogie-woogie stuff, which I quite enjoy. Bob Dylan was a big fan of mine. One of his albums is called Blood on the Tracks. Like, if you think about that imagery, it's like, wow, that's powerful. All kinds of thoughts come forward when you read that. And of course, listen to his music. He's a true poet. Another title, I'll just mention a couple of songs. Blondie's Heart of Glass. I mean, wow, there's another beautiful image of Watch You Don't Hurt Me, because my heart is made of glass and I break easily. So it's just, beautiful. There's another one, Whispering Willows. I like the alliteration there with the W's. And U2, Rattle and Hum is the title of their album. And I was quite fascinated by the group's title. It is a U2 spy plane from Britain, and I thought that was quite powerful, where they've adopted that for the title of the group. Blowing in the Wind is another Bob Dylan song. I'm just going to read from my list here because I don't want to forget anything. Barbra Streisand's The Way We Were, and one of the lines in there, Watercolor Memories. And I thought, wow, that's powerful, that's lovely. And of course, being a watercolorist, it brings me to another level of thinking. Another Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd. Like, even Pink Floyd, the title Pink Floyd, where does that come from? I love it. Bridge Over Troubled Water. I mean, Simon and Garfunkel have written some iconic songs, and the titles of their songs are iconic and they're memorable. These are things that define who they are now. And I mean, you couldn't write a book called Bridge Over Troubled Water because they kind of own that. Sometimes I do take titles of songs and other paintings and I incorporate them into my own work. I kind of think it's funny. I hope I don't get sued or anything, but it's kind of what I was thinking of at the time. I did one painting of a chair in Nova Scotia at night, and it was a real occurrence where people were putting their sheep in this, what they call a communal pasture. And I came upon something really powerful one day when I was going for a walk, and it was a white chair against the gate. And I'm going, what's this chair doing here? And then I went back and talked to one of my buddies that lived in the community. He says, well, the coyotes have been getting into the pasture and killing sheep. And the locals had decided to see if they could curb that. And they dug a hole in the ground, they put a chair in the hole, and they would sit there all night long, probably drinking beer, waiting for the coyotes. They would be in there with their guns, and they never shot one coyote, which is really bizarre. I happened on that about a week later, and I often kick myself for not, the imagery was so powerful. It stays with me to this day. That was like 30, 35 years ago, and I wish I had painted it because it would have told a story. It was looking into this kind of coffin-like hole in the ground, perfect rectangle, carved out nicely with a chair in the bottom of it. And I thought, wow, that's, you happen on these paintings by accident. Sometimes I go looking for paintings. I'm not always that lucky. But if you happen on something, those to me are the most profound paintings that I've enjoyed painting, and now to this day have realized how powerful they were, because not every painting is a fine work of art, but some do cross that line, and I'm proud of those pieces. I've got another painting in mind. We're going to do another video where we get to talk about the stories behind the paintings. And I'm just going to mention a couple of other titles that artists have come up with for their music. Silence of the Night, Golden Silence, Chasing the Sun, Birth of a Rose. Isn't that beautiful? Birth of a Rose. Like, that'd make a great flower painting title. A Season Without Sound. Kind of like when a tree falls in the forest. Will anybody hear it? A Good Rainy Season, A Haze on the Wind, Dali's Persistence of Memory, and my favorite all-time artist, objective painter, Piet Mondrian, has named a painting that he did back in 1940 called Broadway Boogie Woogie, where if you didn't know anything about the painting, it wouldn't mean anything to you, but he loved the new jazz sound when he moved to New York and was quite encompassed by the nightlife and the layout of streets, because everything is parallel and very similar to the painting that he had done, and also the musical notes that was in jazz music echoes the shapes and the boxes in his painting. Now that is something else. I've never done that, but my God, what a great concept. When you learn those little tidbits in paintings, it just makes it even more valuable and more important, right? So anyways, that's about it. There's lots of stuff here. We're going to end it there, and hopefully it'll bring you to some realization that you just can't label your painting unanimous or untitled. It doesn't tell the viewer anything. And you don't want that. You want to bring the viewer to an understanding of what they're looking at, and it's all part and parcel of what you're presenting. And you want to be that person. Non-descriptive title called untitled. Just don't do that. It's not a good look, and it's not a good feature, and it doesn't tell anybody anything. So keep that in mind when you're painting, and maybe the title of the painting will occur to you when you're working on it. And that's all part of the fun and the process. And I take great pride and joy when I come up with an amazing title. And I will talk about that in the next video. We'll show a couple of my paintings. I'll explain the painting and the story behind the painting, and then I'll give you the title. And that's part of the fun of painting. Anyway, if you like this video, you can subscribe, leave me a comment. I much appreciate that. And we'll see you next time. All right? Take care. Bye-bye.